about the heart of the TVA, Loki season 2, episode 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, Will. Well, since you brought it up, what did you think of this episode?
Oh, as I told you with the cliffhanger, since this is a spoiler review, I felt like it was a mini Infinity War with that ending.
Just a little bit. Just a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
Just a touch. Yeah, I am glad I did not get, like, I wasn't a lucky chosen who got the screeners, because they just got the first 4 episodes, and it was confirmed that the only scenes in the original trailers were from those first 4 episodes. So people who got the screeners could watch 1 through 4, be stuck with that ending, and couldn't even go back to the trailers at that point to figure out what hadn't they seen.
Yeah. Now, it's funny about that as far as with the screeners, and I know we'll get more into the review, because I want to say New Rockstars I didn't get a chance to watch today, but I just happened to see it on my YouTube timeline. They did a comparison since the mid-season trailer dropped, which I haven't watched because I don't want to be spoiled at all.
Nope. Not into.
Yeah, but they were saying that there were some scenes that were in the mid-season trailer that dropped today that we saw that apparently was in some of the earlier trailers for the season.
But
I'm just saying, I don't know, because I didn't watch it, so I'm just mixed messages out there on the internet about it. So
okay, I know that the mid-season trailer has scenes that are from the next few episodes.
Yeah,
but I guess my takeaway from what you're saying is that your understanding is it also includes scenes from the original trailers that weren't scenes from the first 4 episodes.
Correct.
Okay, so obviously, because me and Will are kind of anti-trailers, we can't go out and confirm this stuff, because, like, one thing will lead to another. But it sounds like I heard one thing and you heard a different thing, so now there's conflicting notes. So yep. I'm just glad, heck, I stopped watching the first trailer. I don't want to know. But at that, so it's this episode. I don't think I'm as high on it as you are and other people are on it, just because my expectations were so freaking high. I was even listening to some reviews and a reaction before we started recording tonight. And I was thinking about it as I was hearing some of the scenes play out. And I think everything up until the end, like, don't get me wrong, this show is well written and everything. Yeah. But it's also, for whatever reason, I still lean heavily towards season 1, as I liked a lot better. And there was just something about the way the writing here, where a lot of it feels on the nose, like too on the nose for me, like on the nose where I'm like, oh, that's cool. But also I'm like, I could have written that. Like, I'm like, I don't know how clever you're being. It's a bit, like, even though I like the scene with Sylvie and Loki, but the moment she says, like, we're playing gods, it sounds like we're playing gods. I'm thinking already in my mind, you are gods. And Loki says that. Yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. But I wish it was something more interesting that I couldn't have thought of 5 seconds earlier.
I thought the same thing too when I was watching that scene.
Yeah, it's just, and again, like, even though I avoid trailers, I'm mad that I heard some of the things about, or my expectations for what episode 4 would give me were raised when I started hearing so many people's reactions, because people had watched the first 4 episodes. And I'm just like, well, if you're saying this is the best episode of television you've seen in a while, I'm like, that's setting the bar pretty high, especially this year where we've talked at length about all of the good TV that has come out in this year alone.
Yeah. Well, see, I think after, to your point about people raising expectations or lowering expectations, I stopped. I mean, I've listened to reviewers and stuff and other people talk about this show and even our conversations about it. And for me, I just basically decided to like take it one at a time, because especially after one particular, I think it was Harloff who was like bagging on the second episode with the product placement stuff. And then once I actually watched the episode, I was like, are we watching this? I mean, it didn't seem to take anything away from it. So, so for me, it wasn't so that, that didn't color my viewing of the show, because I watched it the first time Friday. I watched it again last night, and I agree with you that there were some things that were telegraphed, like the line, we are gods. And I completely get that. And I thought whenever I was watching it Friday, I was thinking the same. I was like, I know where this line is going. But I think for me, it's more just the overall structure of how they're closing loops in this story. And, because whenever, for example, thinking, starting at the beginning of the episode where we're at the end of time, and of course Miss Minutes shares to Ravonna the thing that's gonna just make her very angry, and of course, yes, we figured it was gonna be a betrayal of some sort, and indeed it was, and but also where it paid off for me was how we got that snippet of that conversation that He Who Remains and Ravonna had in episode 1, and then they flesh it out in this episode. So for me, it was just like completing that arc, and then of course gives us some greater understanding for why now Ravonna is on the mission that she's on.
Yeah, I go back and forth on that scene. Like, I already said it last week that if it turns out the secret is he wiped her mind, I'm like, okay, been there, heard that, sob story, so sad. But I also understand how, well, it wasn't just that he wiped her mind, but she was his commander and helped him so much. But he didn't just wipe her mind, he wiped a lot of people's minds. So you could make an argument that, like, they still haven't convinced me that she is more hurt by his actions than, say, Mobius, than, say, any of the people who have clearly been held hostage at the TVA, through the memory erasing, through the here's your purpose. And like, if you really start to think about it, He Who Remains is doing with the TVA and the people who have been working for the TVA exactly what Wanda was doing to that town.
Yeah. There are a lot of parallels. Yeah.
Holding them hostage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, you're right. That's a great parallel between those two, between the two shows and the two characters, because it is that case. And I think to drop, to echo that point and tie it to another point in this episode too, like when, we get Doc's, whenever they have the whole series, section there where they, figures out Brad betrayed them and everything. And then, where Ravonna and Miss Minutes show up and she is presented the choice to join Ravonna and, being a part of her new TVA. she rejected that because she's like, she's already lost her free will and other things before by being subjected to a megalomaniac and He Who Remains. So, why am I going to do it again?
Yeah. It's when you bring up that scene, all that I think about is it's a very small box.
Yes.
I like you're right that I was surprised that only Brad, but I'm also not because like Docs and crew were very proactively trying to get rid of the timelines because having all of these branches, they knew like it was chaos. It's like the TVA is collapsing and because Loki and them stopped their plan to save the timelines, like now we're in this situation. And I think it also is very true to Docs and the others for not having them follow Brad because Brad's the only one who really did like has seen what's on the other side and is thinking to himself, like he's more at looking at it from I was robbed.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I can just as easily go back, so why not? Why do I have to stay here and live out this life that I had no choice over?
Right.
So they're doing very interesting things there that I wasn't expecting. And heck, I wasn't even expecting Brad to make it this long, but Rafael Castell is doing great, and I hope he's in it for the long haul. he's very good, especially when Sylvie possessed his body. And I was like, you go, Brad. Good on you. But I like how I refer to him as Brad, no matter what. Like he'll never be X5 to me. It's me, Brad.
Yeah, he's always Brad. Yep, he is Brad. Brad Wolf. That is it. But I think that's part of the point. I mean, I think, as you said, I mean, he was the one who made that choice because he had been on the other side, and he liked what he saw.
Yeah,
and
the others are basically pulling a Mobius. They're not looking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm curious in the next two episodes how they're gonna tie up that thread of Mobius and the others and their lives on the timeline, or their refusal to look is also, from my perspective, a mechanism of thinking, this is the life I've only ever known.
Mm-hmm.
So if I go look, well, then I'm going to think, well, why can't I? Like, there's too many possibilities. So, and that can cause people anxiety. So maybe it's more like, I don't care what my life is there. I know what my life is here, and I'm going to see it through. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's that. I mean, I thought about that actually as I was making my notes for tonight and thinking ahead as far as what we're going to see in episodes 5 and 6. I'm glad they purposefully did not show what Mobius's life was before. We know Ravonna, for example, was a teacher. We know Brad had his life as as a actor in the 70s and all that kind of stuff. But I think whatever reset happens after this fade to black cliffhanger at the end of this episode, I think we're going to get some answers to what Mobius's life was on the sacred timeline or one of the branches.
It's gotta be something with jet skis, right?
And it's going to be something with jet skis and something with, and of course it's got to have some hot cocoa there too.
Well, that was an interesting choice. Like, that was random to me because there's been so much emphasis on pie, the key lime pie. And I was actually thinking to myself during this episode, I'm just sitting there watching the whole pie scene, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so the ending of this episode, there's definitely going to be a callback to pie, right?
Yeah.
But then we went on this cocoa tangent, and which was weird because you're like, why is he so like? I'm mad. I'm more mad that Timely didn't save the day, died within 5 seconds, so therefore we might never understand why he was so obsessed with the cocoa machine.
Well, I think it was just the curiosity of the inventor with the cocoa machine. Yeah.
But he knows he was the end.
Yeah, he might have been the inventor.
Yeah, I get it. It was also just in a very creepy location. I'm going to call it out right now.
Well, it's funny because, it was. Because, when I rewatched the episode, I noticed, because I noticed the placement of it when they panned out, that coffee machine, that machine was like there. So what's the significance of that machine?
Yeah. That cocoa machine that I swear, I mean, people, if you know different, please let us know. But I swear that's the first time in this episode we've heard about the cocoa machine. And the only reason why the cocoa machine came up is because Sylvie slammed Mobius for wanting to go get pie. Slammed him real hard.
Very hard.
And then she went to go get pie, but didn't get it pie.
Did not get the,
Yeah, and the one person, like, shout out to Loki. The man is just staying cool and calm right now. And somebody, I did hear someone bring up an interesting point that potentially this could be where it's going, is Loki's on a path that's very similar to Tony Stark's path.
I've heard that too, yeah.
Yeah, which at this rate, let's do it. Let's go all the way because just it will make sense. And he does need, at this point, we need some femininity with his ending, whatever it is. Like we need him to redeem himself, get killed in the process, and all the different journeys be worth it.
Well, maybe this variant actually lives to see another day. Maybe that's the end game with this version of Loki. I mean, or maybe he becomes, to become that, that version of Tony Stark. I mean, it could go one of two ways. He could definitely have the same fate as Tony. Mm-hmm. But that would be the same fate of all the other Lokis. Or he could, or I guess I should say the movie Loki, to separate the two. Or he could become, given the God's speech, he could become the next, he who remains as far as the architect of the rebuilt TVA after we have this reset.
Yeah. One thing that did stick out to me about the pie scene, as I'm calling it right now, is, and actually this entire episode is, even though I didn't like the line because it was predictable, I do think that in this episode alone, they have done a really good job of taking these gods and putting them in the situation that makes sense of why they're behaving like mortals. Mm-hmm. There's so much morality going on. Where it's not them able to use their magic and get their ways. And it's not them able to, burn it all down and everything. No, they actually have to have hope that these other people are figuring it out and it's all going to be okay. Yeah. And so, it felt very much like both of them, both Sylvie and Loki were faced with their own morality. And it made them, and that's what I really like that this show has managed to do throughout both seasons, is really strip away this idea that you are a god and make you just another mortal, which they've never done with Thor before, in my opinion. So I really like that, and that's what places this in in a very unique time.
See what you did there. Yeah, but
I have to do it because they do it every 5 minutes. Okay,
they do.
Time puns, get it? Oh my god!
Time puns, the callbacks to other time travel stories. Gosh, Obi and his not to scale models.
Oh my
god. But yeah, the pie scene, I completely agree that the mortality and morality of being, of gods having to face this choice. And it's funny how, with this philosophical debate and Loki being basically placed in the role of what ironically he who remains was trying to do with the TVA to begin with. You're right. I mean, it definitely does take this series. This is, like to your point that you made about the parallels between WandaVision. This is the same. This series is also like that as well, where Wanda was a really exploration of grief. This is an exploration of mortality and choice and predestination.
Right. So in terms of predestination.
Yeah.
And in terms of, I think you said something along the lines at the very start of this conversation that this episode, it closes a lot of loops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you say that, are you saying that they're closing loops for the better or for the worse? Like, what do you mean by that it's closing a lot of loops?
Well, I think there are a couple of levels. One, the story loops, as far as we were teased something in the first episode, and now we got resolution to at least a portion of the story in this fourth one. There's still, for example, as we referenced earlier, the conversation that Ravonna and he had. There's still some things. I'm thinking that the whole time slipping that Loki was doing before in the first episode, even though it seemed that they resolved it, I'm thinking that it's going to play a role in the fifth and sixth episodes.
Right. Because we still don't know why that even ever happened.
Exactly. So I think that's still something that's at play. And then of course the other big one is just, and even to your point about how they just we're just putting fine points on everything, the Ouroboros of it all. And, right. and for those folks in the audience who may not understand the dictionary definition of what an Ouroboros is, they gave it right to them. So
yeah. I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You're so clever. Got it. Moving on.
Yeah. So, but I did like, but that was a fun scene. And again, it was just really, from an acting standpoint of Ki-Hu and Jonathan Majors. I mean, it was just a fun scene to watch, but it did get to the bigger, the old thing, what came first, the chicken or the egg. And so they're playing on that whole thing in this show as well. So I think in episode 5 and 6, we'll get some resolution to some things, but of course, given that it is Marvel, it'll definitely be a springboard to many more things, including the multiversal war. Right.
So do you think the event in this episode is what causes Loki to start time slipping in the first episode?
It might be. It might very well be.
Okay.
Because I think, because we have, the loom, I guess the thing is, the whole purpose of the loom was, you have this sacred timeline, and the loom is the use all the technobabble, the throughput multiplier or whatever. I mean, basically it was just, you have, in this universe, you have the sacred timeline, and then you just have all these branches that have spun off from that sacred timeline, and the loom was just basically pulling them all back together.
Right.
So I think that time slipping has something to do with pulling all those threads back together into a single unified timeline.
Right.
I don't know what, but I mean,
no, like we don't, because they've done a very good job about teasing stuff, but definitely I don't think they've given us enough information for anybody to come out with like some really clear theories.
Yeah.
I'm sure people are theory spiraling, but I just keep thinking about the fact that it was in the season 1 finale, Loki gets kicked through the time door, and then the final scene plays out, and we all think that he's in the future, or no, we all think that he's in present day, but then they do the whole Planet of the Apes scene,
right?
And we're like, oh no, he's in the future, or we don't know.
We don't know. That could be in the past, because because you're right. Because when we start the second season, we have different places on the timeline with OB. Right. Yeah. Because due to time slipping.
Right, but I don't. Okay, so he gets kicked through the door, ends up in one place. Then we start in season 2, and that's when the time slipping occurs. But theoretically, the more I think about it, the more it couldn't have been this event.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it was when He Who Remains died.
Yeah. That probably wasn't true. Yeah. Because that makes sense.
Why did it only affect Loki and not Sylvie?
Well, it's because she remained at the end of time.
Yeah, and she killed him after he was already kicked through the door. So maybe they're connected, but it's gonna always. I feel like the loop of this season is always going to tie back to that scene at the end of the first season, though.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that was the catalyst that set all the whole the branches in motion.
Right, and even with that, even with the branches in motion, for it to escalate this quickly, I don't know if they've done enough. I don't know if they've done a good enough job setting the rules of why that is. Like, why I get he was. Maybe it's because no one's writing the timeline. Like, the loom can only do so much, but I don't know. It's interesting to think about. I'm glad we don't have to spend too much time thinking about it before we start getting answers with the next episode dropping later this week. Yeah. But yeah, I find it very interesting when we go on these, let's watch these 2 episodes as they come, or these 2 shows as they come out. And it never ceases to amaze me, no matter how different the shows can be, how many parallels we can find them. Because right when we're able to watch Loki episode 4, and with this like, well, what the fuck do they do now? Yeah. And they got 2 more episodes. We're watching Gen V that has its penultimate episode, where I feel like they tied everything up, and I'm like, we got 1 more episode left. Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
That's all I could think about it after watching like both Gen V and Loki. I'm like, well, go figure. Both of you did the same thing to me.
Yeah, I was thinking that same thing when I was watching the end of episode 7, and we haven't even. I know we were also going to touch on episode 6 as well, but you're right. I mean, given that, that they did happen and occur in the same week, it was just like, okay, all right, showrunners. Yeah, I know y'all didn't plan it this way, but how about that?
How about that?
Yeah.
So we will definitely be talking a lot about Loki and its next episode next week, along with the Gen V season finale.